Welcome to episode 2 of Scary Sorare Squads. Of course, in the first episode of our mini-series here in October, we did build a spooky squad. Did we get any scary scores? Of course, find out in the video here today. We will also be building another spooky squad for this game week coming up, and that does mean you guys have another chance to win some more giveaways here on the channel. Of course, remember to subscribe if you want to be involved. Like the video. Let's get into building that spooky squad for this game week. Yes guys, before we recap the rules for the video here today and build our all new spooky squad, we do need to look at the results of the last video, and as you can see on screen here was our squad in the last video, and you can see Christensen, I almost spoke it into existence where he did score his 100 bomb, and I did give him the armband because I had full faith in the man. However, we have some interesting storylines going on elsewhere. Of course, Robin did start on the bench, which I didn't anticipate, and it looked like he might DMP. However, he did come off the bench and avoided me giving him away. And then of course we had Damsgaard, who got a pretty good score in a 6-0 win, unfortunate not to get a decisive. And then we had our two tricks in the squad, which was our goalkeeper and our forward. Of course, that did mean we had to pick players from unfavourable matchups, and they did actually manage to win the game. However, Ben Doak did not play any part of that, scoring 39, and Angus Gunn was on 35 when the full-time whistle obviously blew, so you guys did have an opportunity to win him, and loads of you guys were commenting his name in your galleries, which was perfect, exactly what I wanted you guys to do in order to win the giveaway. However, Opta unfortunately this time did add 2 more points to Angus Gunn, which means we will not be giving him away this game week. But of course, if Opta, can work the other way, it could take some points off us in the future. And just to clarify as well, we will recap on the rules in the video here today, but just to clarify, if the player does score 35, that still counts towards the giveaway. Okay, so a quick rules recap here for episode 2. I will say, if you don't understand any of the rules, I highly recommend going back and watching episode 1, because then of course you'll fully understand the concept here. But just to reiterate, all we need to do in the video today is select a scary squad, then of course use the trick or treat wheel to decide whether our players will have unfavourable or favourable matchups, and then of course any cards that do score 35 or lower will be up for grabs. You guys will have a chance to win them in a giveaway. And of course, I will reiterate, this video, when it goes out, it will be the game week that is currently live or about to go live, so you guys do have a chance to follow along and win some of the players. And pretty much, if the player scores 35 or lower in this game week, then you'll comment on this video their name and also your Sorare username with a chance to win that card. Of course, you have to be subscribed to enter. Welcome to the trick or treat segment. This is where we decide if our players will have favourable or unfavourable matchups. Of course, in the last episode, our goalkeeper did have a trick, so it wasn't a favourable matchup. And in today's episode, yes, our goalkeeper has a favourable matchup, which is fantastic news for us, because goalkeepers, you really need to get them good matchups. Up next, we have defenders, and of course, defenders as well. They're quite important to get a treat. Oh no, just a trick. So our defender must have an unfavourable matchup. Our midfielder, come on, give us a nice, another treat. Oh yes, nice, another treat. Love to see that. So far, just our defender with a poor fixture. Our forward, of course, in the last episode, our goalkeeper and forward were tricks. Oh my god, wow, treat again. Will we manage to get just our defender with a trick, our extra position? Come on, is it going to be trick or treat? Are we going to have just, oh my god, wow. Okay, today is a good episode, because 4 of our players are going to have favourable matchups and just the defender with a trick. During the month of October, I'll be giving away £10 to a lucky subscriber, and if you're a member, I'll be doubling it. All you need to do to enter is click subscribe down below. Okay, so welcome to the scouting part of the video here, and of course you guys have just seen that unfortunately, we only have to choose one player with an unfavourable matchup, and I am going to probably be targeting the international break games again. Just because it's the most fun, I feel like. Now, don't get me wrong, we could go with some of the other competitions here, but yeah, I just think it's more fun to go for these international block of games, so we are going to go with that. And yeah, with that being said, we have some interesting games here for the midweek. We've got Ireland with a very favourable game against Armenia, England, of course, against Latvia, extremely favourable. Italy favourable, Turkey's a bit more of a 50-50, Estonia a bit more of a 50-50 as well, Serbia, Portugal and Spain all very favourable. So in terms of like the treat players, to be honest, we're going to have a wealth of players to pick from. And don't get me wrong, I'm not going to sit here and just go for the obvious players. I know us discussed this in the last episode actually. Some people really enjoy the fact that I don't just sit here and go for the very obvious picks. I do always like to go for just some different players that you guys wouldn't expect. Like for example, would be quite easy for me to just go on England and be like, right, yeah, I'll have Saka and Rice, and obviously there is no point in me doing that either, because not only would it be a bad thing for me because it's just quite boring to do that in my opinion, but it would be a bad thing for the viewers because it's unlikely that Saka or Rice are going to get scary scores. So don't get me wrong, guys. As much as we do have a lot of treats in this lineup today, I am not just going to sit here and pick Pickford, for example. I'm going to go with a bit more. Maybe we even get the Estonian Karl Hein, for example, might be a good one for this one. Just again, a little bit of fun, or maybe the Turkish keeper or something like that. Something just a little bit less obvious that might be a bit of fun. Or perhaps, if we do pick a England player, maybe we go for someone who's a bit more niche or something like that. And of course, when it comes to the treats or the tricks or the unfavourable matchups, pretty much anyone I pick is going to be an interesting or fun player that someone else wouldn't pick, if that makes sense. Now, this is what I'm going to focus the most on in the scouting here before we get into the individual positions, because I do want to quickly briefly look over the unfavourable matchups to see how many players are actually on Sorare. Of course, we need a defender, so Armenia and Latvia don't look like they have too many cards on Sorare. Okay, we have a few in Israel. Of course, we'll properly scout this when it comes to the defender choice. Georgia might be a good place to look at. This is just obviously preliminary searches for us. Moldova might be an interesting one as well. Okay, they don't have that many players, unfortunately. Andorra, how are we looking? Not that many either. Hungary, okay. Hungary might be the place to, yeah, okay. So it looks like we might have to get an Hungarian defender, to be fair. Bulgaria might be a bit fun as well. Hey, we'll have a little look into that when we come into individual positions. But overall, looking at the game week, there is a lot of very favourable fixtures and not that many unfavourable, so we might struggle with that defender position. Onto the goalkeeper position, and it's quite straightforward again this midweek. Obviously, in the last episode, I think we only had one to pick from, maybe two, and in this in this episode today, we only have two to pick from, and it was Karl Hein, as we just mentioned. Of course, Estonia have a little bit of a favourable matchup against Moldova, or we could pick Kelleher for Ireland, and I just think they're both. Obviously, don't get me wrong, we could go ahead and pick up like Donnarumma or whatever, but again, like I'll reiterate the point, it's just not that fun for me. But you know what? I think I'm just going to go with. They're both similar in price. They're both about £15, but I think I'm just going to go Karl Hein. I don't know why. I might still pick up some Ireland pieces as well, because just a little bit of fun. But yeah, I think we're going to go with Karl Hein. Not really for any reason other than the fact that he has featured in the Under-23 Road to Glory, and we know what he can do in net. And Kelleher is not actually. I'm not a massive fan of him, I'll be honest. I know he was decent at Liverpool, but from what I've seen at Brentford this season, it's not really inspired me that much. So we put Karl Hein into our first team, and now we've got a treat or trick defender to pick. If you are new to So Rare and you want to support a small creator in myself, then I would really appreciate if you use my link in the description down below to sign up. And of course, you'll receive all the best referral slash welcome bonuses using the link down below in the description. Thank you. So moving on to the defenders segment, and I will say, of course, this is a trick segment, so we have to pick someone from an unfavourable matchup, and I will say a lot of these nations, of course, don't actually have cards on So Rare, but I did pick out quite a few, and we will go through all of our options now. Well, pretty much the ones that I would want to buy. Now, Israel pretty much only had one defender that I like the look of, Eli Dasser, but again, a common theme here in this segment. You can see he didn't have any cards in season, and we, of course, are trying to enter the best competition possible, which means we need all in-season cards. Then I had a little look at Armenia. Again, this guy looked like the only one that looked decent, and again, no cards, so we couldn't go for him. Then we stumbled across our next best option, or someone we could potentially pick up, and that is Will Orban. Of course, a great scorer here, as you can see, for Hungary. And to be honest, very, very tempted to buy Orban. He is a great option, a great scorer. And yeah, just in general, a decent shout. So that was one that we don't have to delete, is someone that we could get. Then we had a little look at Georgia, and I did actually like two players from Georgia. First one being Saba, but of course, again, you can see he didn't have any cards, so we couldn't buy him. And the next one was Luka, and you can see, again, another decent option from Georgia. And this one, he actually does have cards, which is nice. He's an okay scorer. Not as good as Orban, I would say, in terms of scoring, but he's not far off. He's really not that far off. You know, he's got a couple of good green scores in there, similar to Orban. But yeah, Orban does have a scary score in him for sure. And this guy is not too many scary scores, but he does have them in him as well. And then last but not least was a player from Bulgaria. And yeah, pretty much looked like a decent card as well. This guy's a fullback as opposed to these two being centre backs. And I was really umming and ahhing who to pick for this game week between the three, but then ultimately I asked myself the question that for defenders, what is most important to me? And I think the most important thing to me would be the matchup. And of course, because it is a trick, I have to pick someone with an unfavourable matchup. So then I thought, okay, let's look purely based on statistics. We've got a Hungarian defender, we've got a Georgian defender, and we've got a Bulgarian defender. And when you look at likelihood to win, of course, Bulgaria have 2%. So that immediately crossed him off of the list for me. Then we look at Hungary, 8%. Decent, decent. But then Georgia almost double the chances to win because they're playing a lesser team in Turkey. And I think I'd rather my defender play against Turkey than against Portugal. And to be honest, I think no matter where we go, it's going to be a bit rough. So Orban, I decided not. And Georgian defender, let's go for him. Because, yeah, like I said, the matchup is just twice as likely for them not to concede, although it's probable that they will. But yeah, so there you go. We put Luka into the side. We've got Cole Hein, we've got Luka, and now we have some midfielders to choose from. Yes, guys, up next is that midfielder pick, and I will say it's been a couple of days since I picked up that goalkeeper and defender, and that's because I wanted to give myself a little bit more time to pick out the midfielder, and yeah, we've given ourselves more time, and I've picked out a few players that we could potentially pick up for the scary squad. And the first two names on the list were both from Spain. It was Moreno and Zubamendi, and to be honest, I was tempted to buy one or the other. Marino obviously being a little bit cheaper, so tempted. However, I thought, nah, they're a bit boring. They're a bit too generic of a pick. They're both 100% nailed to be playing. The matchup is super favourable, and I thought, nah, it's probably not going to be that fun for you lot, you know. There's got to be a bit of jeopardy in the series. And yeah, obviously I was looking at Elliot Anderson, but he kind of was the same as the first two. Like, I'm almost certain all three of them are going to play, and I'm almost certain that all three of them will not score a scary or get a scary score, and that's a bit boring for you lot. As much as I do want a good score on So Rare, I do want to be giving away some cards as well to you lot and giving back to the community. So it was down to our last two players then, and it was between Stankovic and Bernardo Silva. And you can see here, Bernardo Silva, although both matchups, of course, favourable because we do have a treat. I was thinking, Stankovic has a couple of, almost scary scores in him, and Bernardo Silva's kind of the same, where he has either a scary score or a super score, and kind of similar to Stankovic. And to be honest, Stankovic was a little bit more expensive, and yeah, to be honest, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go with Stankovic because it's a little bit more expensive. I'm sure one of you guys would love to win a player from Club Bruges who's 20, by the way. Pretty good midfielder playing for his national side. And yeah, you can see we added him to the squad here to go with Hein and Luca. And to be honest, I was going to get Bernardo Silva, but then I thought, nah, this whole series is around, just trying to pick players that aren't obvious and, going for a bit of a fun squad, and I thought it'd be a bit boring if I went and picked up like Zubimendi, Anderson, Bernardo Silva, you know what I mean? So yeah, we went with something a little bit different. We pick up Stankovic for our midfield position. Now we have an attacker and an extra to pick up. Up next was the attackers, and again, we got a treat so we can go for a nice, favourable matchup. And I had a little look into all of the forwards, and to be honest, it was actually, out of all of the favourable matchups anyway, there was only really two teams that struck me as good options for this video, with an honourable mention, of course. So starting things off with Spain, actually all three of their attackers were quite tempting, to be honest. I mean, Jeremy Pino, well, we all know how great he is, and he's looking at about £15 or so, which I think is pretty reasonable for a young, a young forward who's just moved to the Premier League and really, looking very good. And then up next we had Iyarzabal, who I was a little bit less inclined to pay for, just because I think I'd rather have Pino, so he was kind of like put to the side. And then Ferran Torres, again, similar prices to Pino. However, I think Torres is a little bit less like nailed to be playing for Barca. So in terms of the Spain picks, I think I was most favoured to go with Jeremy Pino for the video here today. But then we did have a little look at Turkey, and Yunus Akgün looked very interesting, although he didn't play the first game, as you can see here, DMP against Bulgaria, I believe that is. So that kind of put me off buying him, and his replacement, or the person that did play, was Mr. Yilmaz. And again, actually he didn't even play as either, so yeah, Yilmaz or Akgün is on to play the next game. I don't even know who played for this game here. Okay, so we have Aydin for Fenerbahce. So interesting. I would assume that Yilmaz or Akgün play the next game, but that is the exact reason as to why I didn't go for either of them, because it's a bit up in the air who's going to be playing. And then last but not least, honourable mention to Marcus Rashford. I did want to try and get an England player into the team. However, Rashford was a little bit out of my price range, if I'm honest, guys. £30, yeah, a little bit too steep for me. So we did end up picking up Mr. Jeremy Pino in the end, and yeah, I just think he just made the most sense in my head. Like, he just looked like the funnest player to pick up, and of course a very favourable fixture for Spain. And of course I avoided the Spain midfielders, so I thought, you know what, treat yourself in the forward position. Let's go with Jeremy Pino. We have got an extra player to pick, and I did say I wanted someone from England, and we have gone ahead and picked up an English player. Of course, in the video today we looked at Rashford. He's a bit out of my price range. We looked at Anderson, and yeah, I'm not too sure either. Eze was very interesting. Of course, Kane, Saka and Rice are too expensive. So I kind of ruled myself out of the midfield and attack. Of course, we can't go for Pickford. So pretty much confirmed that we could have an England defender. And to be honest, I like the look of any of them. And the reason I've gone for Jed Spence, who completes our team, is because all of the other England right backs are injured. So I find it hard to believe that he won't play. However, we could see a case where potentially Ezra Konsa plays right back, and then maybe Stones or Dan Burn plays in there. So there is a little bit of jeopardy here. Like, there is a potential that Jed Spence doesn't play, but I thought, you know what, this is kind of a perfect time for Tuchel to give him, a start, seeing as Reece James and Livramento are both injured. And I thought, why not go for him? I do think Lewis Skelly is a better player, but of course, Lewis Skelly is even less likely to play. So, yeah, for that reason, I've gone ahead and completed the squad here with Jed Spence. And you can see I'm really happy with this team. It's a little bit rogue. You wouldn't expect a team like this. It's a bit out of the what's the right word? It's very unorthodox, and you can see that most of our games are favourable, of course, except from Luca. And we will be paying 1,000 essence to play in this. Of course, in the last episode, we did also pay 1,000 essence to play in a special arena, and hopefully we can get the job done with this squad. So there you guys have it. That is episode 2 of Scary Sorare Selections. We were this close to giving away a card in episode 1. Of course, could be giving away a card here in episode 2. And how you guys have a chance to do that is remember to follow that lineup live that we did just build. And you could have a chance of winning some of the cards in it. If you guys have enjoyed the content here on the channel today, please do show me by leaving a like, subscribe if you're new, and we'll catch you guys in a future video. Peace.